We're at Danza del Sol today, and this is Mike Tingley. And Mike is the winemaker and general manager at Danza del Sol. And actually, I've known Mike for probably 5 or 6 years because he used to be the winemaker at Keyways when I was working with Keyways.
That's right, we're old buddies.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk to Mike for a couple of different reasons. He's been around wine country for, I don't know, since the earth was cooling.
Yes.
And he's also a buyer of Woodworth grapes. And I think this is the 3rd year he's bought Woodworth Merlot. And while at Keyways, bought a couple of years worth of Chardonnay while he was there also.
That's right.
So what we wanted to talk about today is a couple of different things. We wanted to talk about Merlot and also about what happens after the harvest. So one of the things is in buying our Merlot, I mean, I love Merlot, and Merlot sort of lost some of its gloss in the last few years since the movie Sideways. What do you think about the resurgence of Merlot? Is there a chance of that?
Well, I don't think it ever really went away.
Yeah.
It's just not as trendy these
Yeah.
days as it used to be. But when I'm looking for, I'm shopping for a Merlot, what I'm really after is kind of some of the varietal characteristics are kind of plum-like, black cherry.
Yeah.
It's a fairly fruity, soft tannin red wine, kind of user-friendly,
Yeah.
I call it. And the Woodworth grapes are a fine example of that. They're very fruit-forward. There's also kind of what I call a cigar box aroma to the Woodworth Merlot, and I'm very fond of it.
Do you think that's because of the soil?
I think it's partially the soil. It's a little cooler in Duluth than it is in Temecula. And also it could be a clonal selection. There's many different clones of Merlot, and they all have their own individual, distinctly individual characteristics.
Well, we picked the Merlot maybe, 3 weeks ago? 3, 4
It's about that, yeah.
Yeah, about 3 weeks ago. And I know that it's fermented and you're getting ready to turn over into barrel, but why don't you talk to us a little bit about what is the process after harvest? What happens, okay, we've brought the grapes in and they all come in the bins, and then what happens?
Well, the grapes are crushed, and they're crushed into a tank, a vat, such as this one here.
Something like this?
Yeah, something like that. And the fermentation occurs in that vat, and the fermentation takes about 2 weeks. And then after the fermentation has completed itself, then we take the grapes out of that tank, and then we go to the press. You can kind of pan around and see the press right there.
Yeah,
And that's where...
That's kind of an antique.
It is. It's 30 years old. It is an antique. And we press the wine off of the grapes in the press, and then the wine goes into another tank, which would be, this is the
Woodworth
right
Merlot.
there.
Look at that.
It's almost full.
And
that's for settling.
quite a dinner party's worth of wine.
That's right. And we're just clarifying it, just settling it out, and within the next couple of couple of days, actually, we're almost ready to do it. We're going to take this and put it in barrels. And once it goes into the barrels, we'll leave it in the barrels for anywhere from a year to a year and a half for aging. And that really softens the wine and gets it ready for bottling.
Well, I'm curious as to when, during the fermentation process, and I know you add a yeast, and there's so many different types of yeast, how do you choose what type of yeast? Do you just have a favorite one you use for everything, or is there yeasts that are better for certain varietals than others?
Yeah, there are yeasts that are more appropriate for different varietals or styles of wine. And a lot of it is trial and error. I mean, winemakers have their favorite yeasts that have been proven very reliable and dependable.
Yeah.
But pretty much the yeast selection is driven by the style of wine that we're trying to produce. And in the case of this Merlot, we really wanted it to be fruit forward, very fruity, so we made our yeast selection with that in mind.
Okay. And now when you're about ready to put it into barrel, what type of barrels are you going to use for the Merlot?
We're going to be going into American oak, mostly American, and some Eastern European oak.
Any kind of I know there's different toasts and things for the barrels. Are you selecting a specific kind of toast for it?
Most of the barrels are medium plus toast, which is fairly heavy toast.
What would you say is the difference between American and the Eastern European oak?
The American oak gives off its oak character a lot more aggressively and a lot more quickly, so we have to be careful with it. In terms of how many of the barrels, what percentage of the barrels will be new versus older barrels that have had wine in them 2 or 3 times.
So you'll have the Merlot will be in a variety of old to new barrels.
That's correct.
Eastern European and American, and then you'll do some blending
That's
at
correct.
the end to get sort of the flavors that you want.
That's right.
Oh.
Yeah.
And how long do you expect it to be in barrel?
Probably about 1.5 years.
About 1.5 years.
Yeah, and then once the wine is ready to come out of barrels, then we pump all those barrels back into one tank, so we have one homogeneous blend. And then if the wine needs to be filtered, we may filter it, and then it's basically ready for bottling.
Well, so now during the time it's in barrel, you'll be checking it. How often do you actually check it?
Oh, well, I taste weekly, and we do laboratory analysis bi-weekly every couple of weeks.
What kinds of things are you looking for? Can go wrong or go
on a
right?
regular, ongoing basis, we're looking at volatile acidity, which is level of spoilage, and hopefully there's none.
None, yeah.
And the free sulfur dioxide, which is the preservative that keeps wines from spoiling. And those are monitored every 2 weeks. There's other analysis that we do once or twice.
Yeah.
But, those are ongoing regular analyses.
So how long before, as you're tasting this weekly, can you really tell what the flavor composition of a particular wine is going to be? Is it closer to the time you're ready to take it out of barrel, or can you tell right off, or does it develop over time?
I can tell right off.
Yeah.
And I can get a pretty good idea, even at this point, before the wine's even gone into barrel, I can have a pretty good idea how long it's going to need to be in barrel.
Yeah.
But that's subject to revision.
Sure.
We'll see how the wines age. But winemakers can get a pretty good idea pretty early in the game as to what their strategy is going to be.
So tell me on our Merlot, what are the flavor characteristics that you know, even though it's not been in barrel and it's only a few weeks old, what do you think?
Cherry, right?
Do you think so?
Yeah.
Well, that'll be interesting.
And of course, it's so young; it's very tannic and it's very aggressive. So it's not anywhere close to being delicious. But all the potential is there.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Mike.
It was my pleasure.
I look forward to tasting this in a couple of years.
Okay.
Talk to you later.
Bye.